Oh, she liked the beer.
Hi, Priscilla. Nice to see you. So I think we'll go ahead and start. Hi, Mindy.
Hi.
I'm recording this because people that can't come to ask because they'd like to see it later. And so just don't, just know that that's happening. And it also goes up on the community television station archives. So I'll send it out to the meeting, and then we're thrilled that you're all here. I'm really grateful that Wynn said that he would be willing to do this for us at this time.
I want to get my light on.
Okay.
My thing is on.
Yeah, you're right there. Second one at the top.
And Tom, since I can hear your voice, I'll just remind people that you're going to be telling your story at the Rise of meeting on October 4th. So hope people will be able to stay for that. Okay, so I'm not going to introduce Wynn. Maybe I am going to introduce Wynn. We think that he's amazing. I first got to know him as a kid of Ted and Olive, and as a kite maker, and then as a great friend of the family, and then as like the heart of the meeting in many ways. And we're really glad that you're willing to share not just your own work, but you're going to be sharing some of Olive's work too.
And I'm thrilled. It's been really fun to look back on her work. Yeah. So, we're ready?
We're ready.
Okay. Is everybody able to see the screen okay with my dear mother's photograph?
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, when I started thinking about just my own career in the arts, I realized that so much of it is possible because of the example that my mother set. My mom, who many of you know very well, was a farm girl from Ohio who, to make a long story short, was one of the first in her family to go to college. And after graduating at Ohio State, she was employed at an Air Force cafeteria where she met my father. And after they met and fell in love, they married, and she moved back east and joined him in New York. And she, raised myself and my two sisters. And throughout her adult life, she had many pursuits. She was an active volunteer. She taught nursery school, but she had a great love for traditional arts. She was an avid quilter. But the thing that I'm focusing on today is the pursuit that she had of stenciling, which, is slowly becoming kind of a lost art. We don't see it so much anymore. But the work of, traditional stenciling on metal, mostly on metal, is something that she loved to do. She found a teacher who coached her and advised her. And she spent, happy hours as a maker. And to me, this was just an example of, what a good life is about. It's, being of service, it's doing your job, but it's also having time for your creative pursuits. And she has, now been gone from us for 11 years, but there's all of her work around this house that is a constant reminder of her. I wanted to show these pictures because I am on the left side during my very brief chubby period. And
I'm not seeing your screen.
Neither am I.
You're not?
No, could we try that again?
Oh no. Okay.
I'm just going to make you I'm going to try making you the host and have you try screen sharing again.
Okay, let's try this again.
Yes, now it's coming in.
Now it's working. Yep, it's working.
Yes, okay.
Oh,
Okay, oh, so you didn't see before. Let's go back here. Ah. Ah. Forgive me, folks, 1 second. Okay, now can we see?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay. Oh no. You're seeing that too, probably.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see.
Wait a second, I wanted to copy all that code.
Okay. Are we looking okay now?
We're looking at Olive and she looks wonderful.
Yep.
And now do you see some stenciling?
Yes.
yes.
Okay. So when I was talking about, the American art of stenciling, this is what we're discussing. And as I say, on the left there, I am during my extremely brief, I think it's about 10 minutes of being very chubby. And on the right side is a more latter day image of my mom and I. And I loved her. I was a real mama's boy when I was a young man. And I was constantly inspired by her. And so grateful for her in my life. She loved to stencil, and she also painted on metal. And all of our life, she would scour antique stores for things that could be embellished. Like this, tin canister was probably like, looking woebegone on the shelf of an antique store, but she brought it home, scoured it with steel wool, painted it black, and then went at it with her brush and turned it into this lovely, canister that we still have and use. She had a very beautiful eye for doing the simple yet ideal embellishment on an object. But what she really loved to work on were tin objects. And again, some of them she would buy new, others she would find in stores and antique shops. And the thing that I was always impressed by is that they were all utilitarian objects. Basically, everything was put to use. This would be sitting on the kitchen counter filled with fruit. It would be something that we would admire, but it was an everyday object that was, being put to practical use every day. Another bowl that has the pineapple design. She loved pineapples. They appear in so many of the things that she made. But if there was one thing that she would kind of consider a tour de force, it was the trays. Now there was a tray that sat in our living room and would hold drinks and snacks, but the very nice trays went onto the wall. This was, I guess, the exception to the idea that her work was to be considered craft, because these trays were magnificent and large and consumed dozens of hours of work. And as you can see, they were just truly lovely objects. And so this one is still on the wall of our dining room. I'm sure many of you have seen it when you've come in for a holiday gathering or visited our house. But a tray like this would be the kind of object that you would, that she would have taken to a jury in order to be possibly admitted to the guild. There's a stenciling guild, and in order to gain entry, you have to show that you can master all of the various techniques. And so this is in some ways a sampler of all the different techniques that's involved in traditional stenciling. And of course, the walls were not spared either. The
Wow.
dining room in our house is stenciled throughout, all along the the top of the wall and around the windows. She would get into a mind and just apply herself to a project, and it brought her great joy. And of course, these are still with us and a constant reminder of her. Chairs. So many of the chairs in the house are covered with their artwork. Most are unique. She didn't repeat herself except for tiny little touches, but she kind of applied herself to each chair as a unique challenge. And they're lovely, lovely objects. Unfortunately, the chairs, of course, get wear and tear. And so you can see the cracks and glued pieces left and right, but the heart and soul is intact. But I just wanted to finish with a picture of her with family, because she was such a family-oriented person. And this was actually less than a month before her death. This was one of our last holiday gatherings in 2008. My sister Linda and her family are there. Sally, my other sister, did not come that Christmas, but you can see how happy she was to be with, as she called them, her chickens. Now, the tradition of doing craft work, I'm attempting to carry forward. Of course, my sisters are both wonderful craftspeople too. My sister Sally is an astonishing knitter, and Linda is a knitter and a sewer, and we all clearly took what was modeled to us and ran forward with it. It's hard for me to explain just why it is that I'm so fascinated by the sky, but some of my earliest memories are of just being enamored with the sky. And frankly, always being surprised that more people don't spend more time appreciating and talking about the sky, because it's constantly changing, constantly new. It never repeats its patterns or the light within it. And I have just always loved it. I wanted to be in it, which is part of why when I was 16, I became a sailplane pilot so I could be among the clouds. And it was in the early 80s when I got a job and was working at Faneuil Hall Marketplace in Boston selling kites. I hadn't really thought about kites before, but I started selling kites and getting inspired by them. And soon after, I started to make my own. And I just want to kind of show you the full circle that I've been around, because this was a show that I had at a gallery in Hanover, New Hampshire in 1982. And I was making kites with paper and bamboo. And it was, you know, kind of how I began making these things using the traditional Asian materials. And I moved on from there to making kites with ripstop nylon. Like the kite that you see in the background of this image was a one-of-a-kind kite that I made doing applique with ripstop nylon. And that's primarily what I did for the bulk of the 9 years that I was living with, you know, making my livelihood with kites. I was doing a lot of craft fairs. Here I am in my craft booth. I was selling ripstop nylon kites wholesale in my little shop in Middlebury at craft fairs, and I was doing lots of residencies with the Vermont Council on the Arts, working with school children throughout the state. And when I went into graphic design, I really stopped making kites per se, but I have always still loved them and decided that at some point I should really get back into it. I was deeply inspired by this book that you see on the right called The Art of the Japanese Kite. When I first started making kites, I started to just collect every book I could find about kites. And when this one landed in my lap, I just really resonated not only with the beauty of the Japanese kites, but also just with the story of the Japanese kite makers, because this book was a chronicle of Tal Streeter's stay in Japan and he went and lived with about, what, 6 or 8 different kite makers, many of whom were 3rd or 4th generation kite makers in their families. And he gave you an idea about their lives, their craft, the dedication that they have to their work, the fact that different kite makers represent the particular kites of their region, that you have kites that are made in this particular prefecture of Japan, which you'll find nowhere else. They have an aesthetic, which I always responded to. The kite on the top page, you know, is very geometric and with very clean lines. And I responded most to those kites, which I thought were just so beautiful. But I was just taken by the whole lifestyle and started to seek out Mr. Streeter because I learned that he would teach. And I took a class with him in 1984 that led to a friendship, and he eventually became my mentor. He was a truly wonderful teacher and extraordinary sculptor and writer. I lived with he and his wife for 6 months and helped him with the follow-up book, which was a similar tome, but this time on the kites of India. And Tal died 4 years ago, which was a very sad loss in mine and many people's lives, but truly a wonderful, wonderful guy, and to whom I'm so grateful. But I guess about 2-3 years ago, I started to realize that I really missed kites. And so when I embarked back on making work, I decided that rather than making kites that fly, I was going to make kites that would be pieces that would fly mostly in our imaginations, that they were kites that would do the job of evoking a kite and evoking our memories of a kite, but the mythology of the kite, or just the particular mindset that we are in when we are thinking of kites or remembering our adventures with kites, is the thing that I actually wanted to focus on. I, to be frank, was tired of the conflation of being an artist and a toy maker. As much as I love toys, it was very difficult to explain again and again and again to people how it was that a kite was assembled and how it should be flown and about how to safely fly it. And I realized that the kite is more than just the thing that is on a string in the air. It's really an idea. And so the work that I'm doing now is really focusing on the idea of kites and the evocation of kites. These are made with bamboo and paper, just like those very first ones that I was making in 1983. And I have to say, although they are evocative of Japanese designs, these are my own design. I've never seen kites that have this particular lattice work on them. And I'm thrilled. I'm taking my own photographs and printing them onto watercolor paper, and then fashioning these kites that range from 24 inches tall to over 6 foot tall. I wanted to show you, this is the kite on the right with the photograph, and on the left is the original photograph that that particular design comes from. And likewise with this one. This is actually the most recent one. This sky on the left was the sunset that Joanne and I watched while seeing a concert at the drive-in venue up in Vermont Expo just 3 weeks ago. Of course, trees and kites are forever entwined, sometimes literally. And so I decided that it would be lovely to put a sky that's seen through trees. And as much as I love the sky, I love the silhouette of bare trees almost as much. I think that they have such beautiful bones. And so I'm celebrating that beauty on my kites as well. And once you have a widget, I've been having a lot of interesting fun taking the components and combining them in various ways. The kite on the left is about 4 foot tall and is combining that very same kite that we just saw with the crescent moon. The kite on the right is actually a little over 6 foot tall. It's in Joanna's yoga studio. And I occasionally have been playing with images that are also in the sky, but on the next order of magnitude away from clouds. As many of you know, I spent 6 years working with Whole Earth, the Whole Earth catalog. And so I felt like it was up to me to make a kite that would celebrate the beauty of the image of the whole Earth. And so this is a kite, again, not my own image. And if we are turning the telescope in the other direction, here is the moon as seen from the Earth. Now, one of the things about Japanese kite makers is that they also are have a seasonal demand on their work. And so it's actually a tradition for Japanese kite makers to make lanterns during the winter. And I started last year to be playing around with lanterns. These are actually a design that I first made for Susanna and Ethan's wedding, when I made and helped to make with other people lots of lanterns that we decorated the tent with that the reception was held in. But I decided to take this same idea of printing on watercolor paper and then manipulating the paper that I had just printed my photographs on to take the same idea to these lanterns. So here's a simple white one. And here's what it looks like with illuminated from inside. I have bulbs that give it a flickering glow too. But I'm also taking my images and folding them into lanterns as well. And so these are some of the same designs that are on the kites. I'm using some different ones as well. And I'm having a lot of fun with these. And I think that these actually have some commercial aspects because I can make these fairly quickly and people have really loved them. They make a nice night light or light for ambiance, and they are something that people have never encountered before, which is always nice when I can see the surprise on people's face when they see a new trick under the sun. The photographed lanterns are hard to photograph, I've found, but they have a lovely glow when they're lit from within too. This is one of my favorites. It's actually a 16th century drawing of the constellations. The stars are accurately depicted and they have beautiful drawings that show the constellations. And I pierce the paper for each of the stars. And so when it's illuminated from within, you have the stars actually shining out from within inside. And I'm really enjoying doing these. And now I decided to kind of hybridize the two things that I'm pursuing. And so I made one of my lattice work kites and I pierced it. This is actually, it's pierced with an accurate star map. And I sprayed it on the outside. And so it's hard to see in this picture, but it's deep blue and black. And then when this is illuminated from behind, it gives off the beauty of the stars and it illuminates the wall behind it with a nice soft glow too. And I just wanted to show one other little side project. Friends asked me if I could make them some lampshades for the lamps that were on either side of their bed. And so I decided to approach it by asking each of them what their favorite novel was. And they gave me copies of their favorite novels, and I made lampshades for each of them that are decorated with pages from their novel. And on one of the fins of the lampshade is images from their cover. So this is actually a book called Lady's Time, written by a local author, Alan Hewitt. And his favorite novel was, help me out, Joanna. Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
100 Years of Solitude.
Thank you. 100 Years of Solitude. And when they went up into their rooms, this is what they look like there. I have to confess, I have love during the time of COVID stuck in my head and just to finish off, I wanted to show that I've been having a lot of fun also with what is clearly inspired by my mother, doing my own form of stenciling. This is our backyard sauna and soaking tub that I've built over the last few years. And I decided to decorate it with a Japanese theme. And so on the wall of the exterior wall is this traditional Japanese family crest. And I stenciled it. I made large paper stencils and then spray painted with black paint to create the dark areas. And my material is actually fencing that was being thrown away, but gave me a nice big surface to stencil upon. By the soaking tub is another Japanese family crest. And in the little area where we change our clothes, I made smaller ones with 3 different family crest designs. But whenever I stencil, my mother is right above my shoulder. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
Hurrah.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you, Wynn.
Yay!
So are we able to ask questions? And
Please do.
well, I don't know if I have a question, but I'm really impressed with the presentation. It's like going to a museum and hearing an artist talk about his or her work. I'm really impressed. I love all the history and the background about the Japanese connection and the connection to your mother and seeing her designs as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Did you talk about the kites in different sizes? Because I have several small kites myself, and then I've gifted them to many people in my family who absolutely love them. So it's just nice to know that they're available in different sizes depending on a lot of things.
Well, I explained that I'm making them basically from 24 inches up to 6 or 8 feet, but you're right. At the Brandon Artists Guild, they encouraged us all to make ornaments during the holiday time. And so I made a bunch of tiny ones, and they have smitten people. I'm glad that you like them so much, Bea, and I'll be making more for this coming holiday.
Well, I have one on the wall. You can see it up there.
Yeah.
It's in my meditation space. I mean, I really don't think about it as a Christmas ornament. I mean, they're like small sculptures, and the people that I've given them to don't use them as ornaments. They use them in their houses just as, you know, an artistic element.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
When I have a question, what are the sizes of the lanterns? How big are they?
Most of them are about 12 inches high and about 5 inches in diameter.
You're beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I found a source for bulbs that turn on automatically at dusk and then turn themselves on at dawn. And that actually was another thing that kind of turned a corner because it's really nice to not have to have the task of turning on and off these lights. And technology is serving that job for us.
Hmm.
And the LED bulbs, of course, are cool, and so you don't have to worry about them catching on fire.
Mm.
As I recall, the ones that you did for Susanna and Ethan actually had candles in them, though, didn't they?
They did. They
And-
did. And I'll confess, Cheryl, there were moments during that reception when I was really afraid that we were going to see more excitement from those patrons than we had bargained for. But all went well.
But I'm also realizing, I knew your mom was a quilter. I had no idea that those beautiful chairs and the trays and things like that were her work, I thought that she collected antiques. And that's where that came from.
No, they were all raw material for her to embellish. And, you know, I could do another presentation on her quilts. Unfortunately, I don't have very many in the house anymore right now, but she was a wonderful quilter as well. And she would go to Ohio during the summers to visit with her family there and would have quilted squares together and then bring them with her to Ohio, where she would gather with her sisters and other friends to do a quilting bee and to actually quilt the batting and the backing all together as a group. And that's something that she also got a lot of pleasure out of.
And when you three were little, did she like set you down and teach you stuff, or did you just absorb it by watching her?
Just absorbing it, just watching her example. Yeah. No, Mom was, it's an interesting question. I think I never expressed interest in learning how to sew. Of course, I learned how to sew on my own later in life. And I'm trying to remember if I ever asked her advice about sewing, but I can't recall. I know about cooking. My sisters and I will all tell you that she never taught us to cook, and in fact, hardly let us enter into the kitchen because that was her domain.
Ah, interesting.
So I really love the sky emphasis and the air and everything. And then when I saw that you exhibited in Hanover, I was reminded of somebody I knew in New York years and years ago, but who taught in Hanover, Kunio Yashimura.
Wow.
Did you ever know him?
It does not ring a bell, Sophia, no.
I'm sorry you didn't meet him because he made the most amazing kites. And also some of them were like giant butterflies without color. They were white, and it was one of my most impressive things that I saw when I was young and, you know, among the artists. I just loved it. I mean, it wasn't what other people were all excited about, but I really was.
Wonderful.
Yeah, no, he's Japanese, of course. Yeah.
Well, for many years, there was a festival in Newport, Rhode Island every year that brought many aspects of Japanese culture to Newport for a week-long celebration and festival. And every year they would bring 2 or 3 Japanese kite makers to show their work and to teach workshops. And so my closest exposure to the actual you know, craftspeople that I was so inspired by was going every year to Newport and sitting at their feet for a week. And it was a wonderful experience.
That's great.
They were an interesting lot, fun-loving, and they made beautiful, beautiful kites, and we would fly them on the last days in big fields there by the ocean. Wonderful setting.
Wow.
Just also you bringing the kites to the celebration of life for so many years. So there'd be huge bubbles and kites in the air and little kids. It was great.
Hmm. Well, thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you, Wynn.
Thank you, Wen.
Okay, well, it's absolutely
Thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you all for coming.
Oh, thank you.
And thanks, Gwen, for bringing all of that into our circle.
I have one suggestion.
Please.
Wen, you might consider getting a marketing director. I think what you have is so commercial, you might become the wealthiest Quaker alive.
That would be difficult.
I see an ethical dilemma ahead.
Well, you can always do great things with your money.
It's amazing to me how with your kites and with the lanterns that they have an effect that is kind of rising, and but they're done kind of very carefully so that all the spaces are all the same. And I certainly amazed. I admire that. I do. Do you know what I mean by that? Yeah.
I think so.
I think so.
I also like the contrast between the very stiff pieces and the amazing cloud together. I thought that's really beautiful.
But I think they have such an expansive feeling. You know what I mean? I mean, because you feel like you're looking at the sky in a way, but even the lanterns, I mean, to me, they just expand my consciousness. That's what it feels like, you know. I mean, I'm just sort of taken beyond, and that's really quite an extraordinary experience to have. And thank you for it.
Also, it seems to me that it takes the immensity of the sky and brings it down so it's all there but accessible. In one thing. It's quite amazing.
Oh, thank you. Sometimes I see them as windows.
Yeah.
Just making a little window to the sky, because you know the window is a frame that lets us kind of comprehend something which is expansive and infinite, and by putting a frame around it, we bring it down to our human mortal level. But no, thank you. You all are very kind. I really appreciate it.
No, I think you should think about having a show in the gallery, like either the Sheldon or the gallery that's attached to the theater would be a wonderful place to see a variety of your work. And let me know, maybe I can write about it.
Well, I look forward to when we can all be gathering together in galleries again.
We will.
Yes. Yeah.
But this is a great opportunity, really, to be able to gather together in this format. And thank you, Cheryl, for putting this together. Is she still there? I can't see her.
I'm still here, and I'm loving it, and I'm so grateful to all of you that are willing to share what you do. I mean, I'm seeing a couple of people here who have already done that. And if anybody else would like to, just let me know. It really is a glimpse into the creativity of our community.
And it's brought on by this pandemic, because otherwise we'd be going along in our lives as usual and we wouldn't have, this is rather intimate actually, and it's available to all of us, wherever we are in whatever state of health. And it's a real grace, you know, it's great.
Thank you again, everybody. I hope everyone will stay well and safe. And thank you so much.
Hi to Jerry. Hi.
Thank you.
Good evening, all. Be well and safe.
Thank you.
Bye, Robert.
Oh.